I'm going to go down with my people.
Wow. Wait. But like, what made you go with them?
I mean, I love my adopted family. They're very dear to my heart, and I thank God for them. All the paperwork was done, and I actually went to a Korean family to be adopted, and they had me for a week. I did not know this at all, and they returned me. Welcome, beautiful people, to the Lost and Local podcast. We're Adam
And Hannah.
Two Korean citizens who grew up abroad and are now living and figuring out life in Korea.
Join us as we share stories and our honest perspective on what it means to be lost and local. Adam,
Yes.
what is your go-to response when people ask, where are you from?
Yeah, I think my go-to response, for example, even at church this past Sunday, someone asked where I'm from. And my go-to response will always be, yeah, I'm from Oregon and California. So it's really simple. And that resonates with a lot of people that come to visit Korea. A lot of them are from the West Coast. So I get usually a pretty positive reaction. But that's generally what I say because it's such a long story to go outside of that. I don't want to mention everything else because then I have to go through this long diatribe of they'll start asking questions. So my go-to response for sure is just, I've lived in Oregon and California.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what's the long diatribe?
Yeah, the long one, for a little bit of my background, I also was born in Korea like you, Hannah, but not so. I was born in Busan.
Oh.
So those of you who know, Korea is a peninsula and Busan is on the southern border of the peninsula. Totally different feel, vibe or whatever than Seoul with Busan. But I was born in Busan, but I was an orphan. So at that time, orphanages were more prevalent and it was different than it is now. They've changed Korean laws since. So they're not doing international adoptions any longer in Korea. But at the time when I was born, they were doing international adoptions. But I grew up in an orphanage and I actually was there for over 3 years of my life.
Oh.
After the fact, just a few years ago, I found out that I was actually, all the paperwork was done and I actually went to a Korean family to be adopted and they had me for a week. I did not know this at all and they returned me. Yeah.
What?
Yeah. Which was like surprising. I was like, oh my goodness, that's crazy. And then I was over 3. And so when you get older in an orphanage over 3, it's almost like game over.
Yeah.
Like more than likely, most people who internationally adopt, they want babies. Because they don't want to have to like worry about teaching an older child English. They just kind of want to start fresh. Yeah, by God's grace, I was adopted. And I was adopted to a small town in southern Indiana. Now, this was in the Midwest. If you know the states, and this was in the United States, and it was in a Midwest state called Indiana. So Indiana, and I didn't live up in the northern part of Indiana. I lived in the southern part of Indiana, which is the part where I grew up. Is actually parts of it are more south than parts of Kentucky. So, yeah, and it was different during that time for me. I grew up, I was the youngest child at the time. Actually, I'm still the youngest child, but my adopted family already had 4 children biological to their own. I don't remember anything about the orphanage. Now, I've talked to fellow adoptees after the fact, and some of them actually remember their orphanage experience.
Wow.
Your story where you realized at the age of 5 or 8 or somewhere around there that you were
5.
actually not Korean because you drew yourself with a white crayon. I, on the other hand, was super uber aware of being different.
No one told you, but you were just self-aware.
Oh yeah, I was super self-aware.
I see.
I mean, from the onset, I remember going to like the local grocery store and I was like a zoo animal.
Oh.
So people would like do double takes. They would come up and talk to my mom, or they would come up to me and they'd be like, do you speak English? Really slow. And like, sometimes I'd get made fun of. I would get people, it was a really bad experience. I was honestly I didn't have anyone to really talk to. They didn't talk about mental health. They didn't have counseling back then. So it was something that I just internalized, but I definitely knew I was different. And we'll have to talk about our racist prejudice experiences at some other point. Yeah, I grew up knowing I was definitely not part of the culture, even though I lived in that culture. I was always treated differently. Fortunately, I did make some friends that, made things a little bit better. But I didn't grow up with the internet. We didn't have cell phones. We didn't have any of that stuff. So my world was very different and very small. Knowing in my life that I did not want to stay in that small town that I grew up. We had one high school, one junior high, one elementary. Actually, we had a couple elementaries, but we only had one high school.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, I need to get out. And to make a long story short, through the high school years, I moved up to the big city, which would be the equivalent. Well, it's Indianapolis, Indiana, which was like 2.5 hours away. And you might think 2.5 hours is not that far, but in a small world that I lived in, it was like
big. It's like a big move.
Complete paradigm shift of life. So I moved up there. And I'm kind of introverted, so I didn't make any community when I moved up there. I moved up there right out of high school. Back in my day, it wasn't always a natural thing for you to just get through high school and go to college. So a lot of my friends never went to universities. But I went to Indianapolis and I didn't go to a university or a school until I was 20 years old. And then I was at the university, and because I'm Korean, there was a Korean professor who walked by me and he stopped and was like, "Are you a Christian?" Korean people
Just
are very
out of the blue?
forthright. Yeah. Do you go to church? And I'm like, I am a Christian, and no, I'm not going to church right now. That's a whole different story. We'll have to talk about that later someday.
Okay.
But he was like, okay, you need to come to my church. You know how Korean people,
Oh my
sometimes older Korean people tend to just tell you what to do.
Yeah.
And so literally while I'm there, he's calling the church, letting them know, oh, I've got this person's gonna come to the church, make sure and I'm like, okay, I guess I have to go.
Wait, so they were like a Korean immigrant. They weren't Korean American.
The Korean professor.
Yeah.
They were an immigrant. I went to my first Korean church ever at the age of 20.
Wait. But what made you go with them?
I just I don't know, maybe I was thirsty for relationships because I'm such an introvert.
Okay.
And I was just like, well, and deep in my heart, I had strayed in my relationship, in my faith. Okay, maybe I should go. So I walked in to my first Korean American church experience at the age of 20. And basically never left it. Now that many, many years later. But what's interesting is that even though over the years I was very deep into Korean American culture, I realized that I don't feel Korean either. They would have the Konglish, they would have all the different Korean American experiences, but I didn't grow up in a Korean church. I only went to one when I was 20. But then I began to assimilate a bit to understanding Korean American culture and under the umbrella of church experiences. Yeah. So I began to feel like, okay, they're accepting me. I feel like I belong, but I still didn't feel like I belonged because even though I looked like them and even many of them were very Americanized. Yes, we had some of the more recent immigrants come, but everyone made efforts to speak English. I appreciated drawing closer to my identity in Korean, but I still didn't feel like, well, I look like them, but they treat me differently. I don't understand what they're saying to me, or I don't resonate with their experiences growing up with immigrant parents. Yeah. So it was something that maybe I'll appreciate this period of time and then I'll move on. So, yeah, I moved to Oregon to go to a small Bible college. I thought I was going to go into missions. So the idea of going back to the Korean community was like, oh, that was nice that I spent a couple of years with the Koreans. I'll just go back to being in an English speaking, more like Americanized church. I'll just go to Bible college where it was just all teachers that spoke in English, and I'll go off to the missions and maybe learn a different language.
Can I just ask a question here?
Oh,
At this point, did you ever want to visit Korea?
okay. Well, I didn't share that part. I ended up having a crazy opportunity and privilege to go to Korea in 1996. So I went to Korea for 1 month, and they like did this intensive, like, oh, we're gonna like teach all these Korean adoptees. They were from Europe and America or United States. And we're gonna teach them for a month, help them learn about their culture. Maybe they can find their original orphanage, et cetera, et cetera. So we went for a month. I went to Korea for a month. So I got to experience Korean culture a little bit. But Korea in 1996 is very different than Korea today.
Yeah.
Korea in 1996, our culture as Korean adoptees from the United States, we're louder, we're more talkative. We don't understand the social norms, and we would have Koreans like throw things at us. They would like, one guy that was drunk threw a bottle of beer at us. We had several like people that like scorn us and I remember thinking like, wow, Korea is like kind of crazy. They definitely aren't
like
accepting of outsiders. Yeah.
Yeah.
And this was like years ago.
Yeah.
I remember thinking like I really enjoyed visiting Korea, but they're not very accepting of outside culture.
You'd think that because they hosted the 88 Olympics, they'd be a little more like open, but I guess not. Like for the
And I
average
think
person.
they were confused by all of us being Korean, but we all dressed obviously not like Koreans, and then we were all pretty brash and kind of too loud. So they were like, "What are these outsiders just coming in here thinking that?" And so from their perspective, I kind of understand. Like, okay, they're probably thinking you guys are disrespectful to us, but I didn't know that at the time.
Yeah.
Moving to Oregon, like, oh, I'm done with the Korean culture. It was a nice experience. I'll just go to this Bible college, try to be a missionary, and move on in life. But then a whole nother different story. But then somehow, this is a long story, but I'll make it very short. A Korean pastor found out that a Korean person was going to a local Bible college, and a very persistent pastor kept visiting me, kept calling me. And then I ended up doing a position I never wanted to do. I ended up becoming a youth pastor.
Wow.
At 22 years old. I didn't know what I was doing.
Yeah.
And so I finished out Bible college, fortunately. And I had ended up serving 3.5 years as a youth pastor during my tenure at my 4-year Bible college. I graduated and I'm like, all right, praise God. I did 3.5 years of something that I never wanted to do, but God was still gracious.
Yeah.
I'm going to move on in life. I'm going to be maybe a missionary. I don't know what I'm going to do.
Yeah.
And then another long story short, I ended up doing youth ministry for I did youth ministry for 17 years.
Wow.
So my 3.5 years of thinking I was done, I felt like, there's a story in the Bible where there's this servant of God named Jonah, and God calls him to Nineveh where there are a bunch of pagan unbelievers, and he tells Jonah to go and basically share the message of God. And Jonah was like,
Nope.
No thanks. So he got on a boat and tried to escape. And I felt like I was Jonah, where I'm like, oh, you want me to like do this whole go to Koreans and share, and like no, I'm gonna escape. I escaped after 3.5 years of youth ministry. I escaped. I'm like, I'm done. And then God pulled me back in.
Wow.
But yeah, so and then I ended up meeting my Korean American wife while I was in Oregon, and that's a long story. But fortunately, I got married, and we've been together now for many years. We've been married now for coming up 18 years.
Wow.
But we knew each other for we've known each other for 23 years now.
Wow.
I served in the Korean church all these years. We owned a house in Oregon. moved to California. We rented out the house in Oregon, lived in California for 8 years, served in the Korean church in California, moved back to Oregon, moved back into our house in Oregon. And then we were in a situation where things were going really well. But my wife, her grandparents were an instrumental part in helping raise her up into the age of 8, I guess, 8 or 9, 8, 7 or 8. And so they were getting older, and we were at a stage in our life where we were like, maybe we could go visit them for a year and spend quality time with them. Plus, we also heard about IVF, in vitro fertilization. So we were trying to have a child, and we're like, well, maybe we could like kill 2 birds with 1 stone. Go visit her grandparents for a year, maybe try IVF, come back to the States after a year, and then we've now been here for 6.5 years.
Oh, so this was before COVID. Wow. Yeah. Okay.
So we moved to Korea in 2018, September of 2018.
September of 2018.
So coming on 7 years.
Wow. So Adam, you're doing things before it trends. Because the trend now is to like come live in Korea, but you did it in 2018. YOLO was a trend, but you did it before it became a trend. Look at you, trendsetter. Sure.
In Portland, the moniker of the Portland NBA team is a trailblazer. Oh. So I did my own Oregon metaphorical trail, and I pioneered my own way.
That's amazing.
It's been a pretty amazing experience. A lot of people, because I'm obviously westernized, and they thought, well, you don't really speak the language. It's going to be really difficult for you in Korea. Some people worried that, oh my gosh, you're going to have to join the army. But then I wasn't a Korean citizen at the time. And I'm like, dude, I'm way too old to join them. They're not going to want an old man. So I didn't have to join the army. And then I ended up getting my F4 visa. And we found out in 2012 that they passed a law for Korean adoptees if they move back to Korea and they live there for 9 months or whatever, that they'll issue, if you apply and you pass background checks, etc. They'll give you dual citizenship. They'll give you a Korean citizenship. You can, and then you can elect to keep your other citizenship if you want. So I am a dual citizen, which is crazy.
Yeah.
And I was able to get that without passing the Korean
language
proficiency test. So it's really funny in Korea, especially if I fly back into Korea, or if I go to Korean Community Center and I have to show my Korean ID. And then they'll start speaking to me in Korean, and I'm like, 한국말은 못해요. 죄송합니다. They're looking at me like, wait, you're a Korean citizen. Of course you know Korean. You pass a proficiency test. There's like a super, super small percentage of people that live in Korea with the Korean citizenship, and the only people that don't know Korean are Korean adoptees that got the Korean citizenship. And we're a really small percentage.
Yeah. You know, that's really funny because I experienced the opposite. They won't hire me as an English teacher because I have a Korean passport. They're like, there's no way you're a native speaker. And I'm just like, what do you mean?
Oh, yeah, that's true. Actually, in Korea, being a Korean citizen, I can't utilize my citizenship as an American at all, as a United States citizen. Even if North Korea were to invade Korea, I couldn't go and get sanctuary at a U.S. embassy and get flown out.
Wait, why?
Because I'm a Korean citizen.
But you also have a U.S.
True, but as a Korean citizen, it's against the law to utilize your U.S. citizenship in any fashion or form, even in that situation. Now, could people technically like just do it? Sure.
Oh, I see.
But I told my wife, babe, I'm going to go down with my people.
Wow.
But she's a U.S. citizen, so I'm like, get on that plane and get out of here. Yeah, it's pretty cool being in Korea. I sometimes like pinch myself that I'm here in Korea because it wasn't something that I aspired to do. Even coming to Korea, we were like, oh, we'll be here for a year. But I found that, Korea, as a Korean adoptee, third culture kid, I guess, for some people come to Korea and they think of all the negative things. And there are negative things being in Korea. Sure, I have privilege too because I'm a U.S. citizen and I didn't have to go through the rigors of the education system and all the expectations. But for me, at least in my older age, Korea's been a pretty peaceful experience for me.
Can I just go back a
Sure.
little bit? What made the two of you extend your stay from like wanting to just be here for a year and now like you've been here for 7 years? Was there like a definitive moment, or did you just like wake up one day and you're like, oh, we've been here for 4 years?
During COVID, we were in Korea when COVID came out in early 2020. And then my family from Indiana had a little bit of a crisis going on. I have to be a good son. So I'm like, babe, I think we have to go to America right now. We still were working on IVF. So we were like, it still wasn't happening, but we were still hoping that maybe we could have a child. So, but we needed to divert our Korea experience, go back to the States. So we were in the States, and after the family crisis, we were in America for 5 months. So we thought maybe this is it. We'll just stay in America. But then we prayed about it, talked about it, and we were like, well, let's give, IVF an opportunity, a second shot at that. And then let's move back to Korea. Because at the time with COVID, there was a lot of crazy stuff going on in the United States that was getting like really crazy. To the point that I was just like getting a little bit disillusioned with the United States and the politics and the safety. I just was like, I think we are going to be safer
In Korea.
Yeah. So we kind of made the decision to come back, and we came back in 2020. We're not closing the opportunity of moving elsewhere.
No.
But I don't think, we don't know. Obviously, we can't say where we're going to be even next year.
True.
But I personally love Korea.
Yay.
Yeah. I think one of the questions I asked Hannah, like, I don't know what I asked you, but something like, do you feel like this is home now, or something like that? And I feel like Korea is home now for me.
Wow.
As a Korean adoptee, and then living as a Korean adoptee in the Korean culture in the United States, you never feel like you have a foot in either one. Even growing up in Indiana, I never felt like I belonged there. So when I moved to Korea, for some reason, it's like an experience you can't explain, but I felt like I was home.
Oh.
I felt like this is where I belong. And even though I didn't speak, I still don't speak the language. And I mean, I understand a little bit and I can speak just a little bit, but it's just a little bit. But I feel like this is where I was born. It wasn't my decision to leave. God did work through that. But I feel almost like a sense of community. I mean, we're still pretty much a homogenous society.
Yeah.
But there's like that, do they call it chon? What's that? Chon? Or I don't know exactly how you pronounce it, but I personally feel it, even though I don't speak the language, and even though I wasn't raised in a Korean culture, I feel that sense of belonging and community. I feel really at peace. And maybe if I were younger, I would be more apt to be like, okay, I still want to explore the world. I want to, see where opportunities arise. But now that I've gotten older, the health insurance is super important for this old man. And then like safety. I'm just like, this is at least, I think, always going to be our home base. I mean, we might travel. I mean, I actually have a YouTube channel called Traveling On because my wife and I love traveling, but I think for now we plan on making this our home, at least our home base.
Yeah. I'm really encouraged by that because I think more and more like your passport, where you live, the language you should speak, they don't necessarily have to align. And I think you're like living proof that just because you don't like check out all the boxes doesn't mean this can't be your home. And I think that's really encouraging to me.
I think even though I kind of look down on westernized culture of individualism. And I'm like, well, we shouldn't be so individualistic in the United States where we both had experiences in. But I feel like that individualistic perspective helped me cope living in Korea. Because
you're different. And you're like, it's okay.
I've always been different anyway. So it's nothing new.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, it can be kind of a bad thing because I guess what I was trying to say as an individual, as a Korean third culture person living in Korea, I hear stories of people really struggling. But for me, because I grew up in a more individualistic society where you got to sink or swim, I feel like I'm not affected by whatever comes my way. It doesn't bother me. Like if people look at me cross-eyed or with a side eye, like, why don't you speak Korean? You're Korean. If like even some of like the places I go to that they know me, they sort of wonder like where I get my hair cut or where I do certain things, or people are sort of like, you still don't know Korean? Like you've been here because I've been a patient for a particular doctor for so long, and that people are still wondering like, why don't you speak Korean yet? But it doesn't give me shame for some reason. My language learning skills are pretty lame. I could probably do it where there's a will, there's a way type of thing. But I'm so busy with other things in life. I'm like, well, if I studied Korean, I would have to cut all these other things in life. And I'm like, right now, it's not a cost benefit worth it.
Yeah.
And it helps that my wife speaks Korean fluently, and for the most part, Koreans have been really nice to me. Like I'll go to restaurants or on my own, or I'll just go out and I'll just explain to them I don't speak Korean. And they, unlike 1996, they treat you a lot nicer. I think
great.
The millennials and Gen Zers are really accepting. I feel like for the most part, millennials and Gen Zs in Korea, they are shy and introverted. Maybe they don't want to speak it, but I think they understand the simple English. So when I try to order things or whatever, they're more accepting.
Yeah.
So it's kind of nice.
Yeah. Also, there's like technology, like
Papa Go, Google Translate.
Yeah, like language is not as significant as other things when getting around. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Wow. Cool. Okay. So I have 2 more questions for you. The first one is, what would your younger self think if they saw you now?
I think my younger self would be pretty excited about the future.
Wow.
Yeah. Because he always wanted, the younger him, which is me, always wanted to escape Indiana. I mean, I love my adopted family. They're very dear to my heart, and I thank God for them. But the location, especially growing up at that period of time, was horrid. So I was like, I got to get out of here.
Yeah. That's awesome. Okay. And then our last question, just more on a lighter note. When you watched our first episode, what stood out to you?
Disappointed in myself.
Why?
No. I'm semi-joking, but I have a YouTube channel, and I feel like I progressed in my communication skills on YouTube, but podcasting is actually a little bit of a different animal.
Oh.
The fillers that I use are pretty lame. I use way too many fillers, but I think the repetitions will help as we do more podcasts. Maybe by the 20th episode, we're not going to use like or as much. But I'm excited about it. I'm excited about it. I'm joking. I am a little disappointed, but in the end, after it's all said and done, I'm really excited about the podcast and interacting with all of you, being able to hear some of your stories. We'd love for you to comment down below. Of course, like and subscribe.
Yeah.
But we are looking forward to not just sharing about our life and perspectives and different topics that come our way, but I don't know if you can see this. Here, I got another mic, which means that the studio is open for guests.
Woohoo!
So that's very exciting. God provides. And we definitely have guests already lined up. We just have to figure out dates that they can come. I don't, our Our Korean business is called Tuesdays at 2, but I don't think our guests can come Tuesdays at 2.
Maybe some.
Maybe some.
Yeah.
But yeah, we might have to grind a little bit and do it on a different day. But yeah, we're really excited about it.
Yeah.
We look forward to sharing life with you all. And yeah, let us know what your thoughts are. And if you have any questions of Hannah or myself, I'm sure some of you can relate with me. Some of you can relate with Hannah and maybe other guests as the future unfolds. But anything else, Hannah, that you can think of?
Oh, this is great. Thanks for listening to our lives, and please continue, because there's so many more stories to unpack, because like that's just the bare bones of our story, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Anyways, you all, thank you so much. Hit that like button. Make sure you subscribe. Hit the notification bell on YouTube at least. We will be getting these out to all the other platforms. In the meantime, you all stay safe. God bless. Peace.